Bienvenue, Ani, welcome. As I mentioned last time, in this video, we will be going into more depth about the audience I've chosen and what effect that will have on the structure of the story. When I say structure in this case, I'm not talking about the plot or the story's internal world, but rather the physical structure of the story, how many pages, what kind of words, etc. Let's start by looking at the purpose again, which is to support reading and language goals, receptive and expressive for the professionals in the room. Writing for this purpose is to walk a tightrope between simplicity and complexity. The story has to be able to be read and understood by a child struggling with language, but it also has to be a story that they can enjoy. Making it an enjoyable story to read also helps the adults supporting them, who may have to hear the same story hundreds of times. For example, my sister, the communicative disorders assistant, has several children's books memorized just from reading them with clients. Enjoyable, of course, can mean many things. Is it funny? Is it thrilling? Is it full of lovable characters? What does the story have that asks people to come back and read it again? It is also important to note that children receiving language support may be reading below their grade level. So, for my purpose, I have to be careful to keep the target age range for the content of the story broad, while keeping the target reading level narrow. When I was in elementary school, the school board brought together a group of students from the various schools to talk about our thoughts on the French immersion program in which we were enrolled. They asked us what we thought could be improved in the program, and the first thing that came to all of our minds was the books. We were all learning French as a second language, but the books we were given to read were written for children whose first language was French. Because of this, we were usually reading books written for 2 grades below us. The stories felt childish to us, and as a result, we found them either boring, strange, or both. They did absolutely nothing to encourage us to read in French. Just because you don't have the vocabulary to read a more complicated story doesn't mean you want your stories to be simplistic. And I'm using the term complicated loosely here. We are still talking about picture books and early readers, but there is a difference between See Jane Run and Hop on Pop, even though their vocabulary level is similar. Dr. Seuss is, of course, a giant in this field, but another good example is Mo Willems. I had a teacher who read Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus to my grade 5-6 class, and we thoroughly enjoyed it, despite it being a picture book with simple words, simple sentences, and simple illustrations. We were excited when we discovered The Pigeon Wants a Hot Dog, and had her read that too. We were not the intended age range, but a good story is a good story, no matter who is reading it. With all that in mind, I need to make sure that the actual words being used to tell the story are useful for my stated goal. So, how do we do that? In my case, I'm going to consult with an expert in my target field, namely my sister, but more generally, one of the main ways we, as writers, learn to write a certain way is to look at how other writers have done it. If you want to write fantasy, read fantasy. If you want to write children's books, read children's books. If you want to write good emails, read emails. As you read, think. That is an important part of the process and more difficult than it sounds. What is it about this piece of writing that you like? What don't you like? Why? What is the writer trying to do? Is it working? Why or why not? And why does it appeal or not appeal to you specifically? Finally, the most important question: how can you apply this information to your own work? Every story is built on the foundation of the stories that came before. Now, this does not mean a quick copy paste of the format, tropes, and archetypes will get you a good story. This research is not designed to write the story for you, but to give you tools for its construction. Many art tutorials I have watched give the advice that you have to know the rules before you can break them. Writing is the same way. To successfully subvert a trope, you need to understand it inside and out. Why is it used? Why does it work? How will breaking it surprise the reader, and will it be satisfying? For me, the biggest question for this particular project is, how do you tell a complete story in a small word count. Being concise as a writer is not my strong suit. In fact, it's probably my biggest weakness. This script already has a word count over double the average count of the books I read as research. And I'm only just now getting to the part where I actually talk about that research. So, what did I learn? My sister brought home 7 picture books from her work collection that she felt were good examples of the kind of books she looks for. I compiled some statistics about them to give me a better sense of what I'm aiming for structurally. That way, I can give myself a specific word count range to work towards. Full disclosure, these numbers may not be fully accurate, I lose count very easily, but I did my best. Her main focus was to bring me books from Scholastic's Acorn series, which they describe as illustrated early readers that plant a love of reading. These books come equipped with a reading level, grade 1, and a target age range it will appeal to, from pre K to second graders in the examples I was given. She also brought me a couple of books from Scholastic's Branches series, which is the next level up, but they aren't my focus right now. And she included 3 books not part of the Acorn series, but that targeted a similar level. The Acorn books have a fairly consistent page count, but wildly different word counts. This is reassuring for me because it shows more wiggle room, even in a series that likely has set qualifying standards, than I was expecting. So I could, technically, write nearly 700 words and still fit in my target category, but I should probably aim for between 100 to 200 words and keep unique words down to 30 to 50%. The Acorn books also come equipped with chapter divisions, even though the chapters are extremely short. My sister specifically mentioned to me that chapter divisions are useful tools, no matter how small. They give the book clear milestones for the child to push towards and allow opportunities for another activity to act as a break from what can be a difficult task. So, what shape will this story take? My aim will be for around 100 to 200 words, 40 to 50 pages, with 3 to 5 short chapters. And now that we have that framework, we need a story to put inside of it. But there's still one item left on the to-do list I made during the initial brainstorm. The setting needs a name. Therefore, next video, we'll be exploring where the story takes place. See you there!